I'm going to circle back to hybridization in just a moment, but I'm going to start with domestication. So the process of animal domestication has been fundamental to the development of evolutionary theory, going all the way back to Charles Darwin. And the reason that studying domesticated species is really useful is it can simplify the study of how genotype-phenotype relationships work, and it involves radically altered selection regimes that we control, and it modifies ornamental, physiological, and/or behavioral traits in service of humanity. One really important feature of this process is that it tends to impact key life history traits like reproductive onset, diet, etc., especially in the case of animals that we use for food production. And so here, for example, is a red jungle fowl. It's the closest living relative of chickens, and they're only a few thousand years diverged. The red jungle fowl takes 20 weeks to mature, and its mature body weight is 2 pounds, and it produces about 10 offspring a year. And from this organism, we produce a number of different chicken breeds specialized for different tasks. So our meat producers can reach 3 times the body mass of the red jungle fowl in less than half the amount of time. Our egg production breeds can produce up to 300 eggs a year compared to their relatives' 10 eggs a year. They come in all kinds of crazy shapes and sizes. If you've been to a state fair, you've probably seen some of these. And then our fighting roosters are very aggressive and weaponized and experts at male-male contests. I'm sort of interested in domestication as a prelude to fertilization, so the reversal of this process, because all of these kinds of traits, so maturation rate, aggression, reproductive rate, and so on, would likely be important in the case of a biological invasion back into the wild habitat. So this process, reverse domestication, it reunites divergent breeds, including cultivated and free-living relatives, and secondary contact. In contrast to artificial selection associated with domestication, involves very complex and uncontrolled selection regimes. And so, as a model system for the study of this process, let me tell you a little bit about the history of one feral population of chickens that lives on an island in the middle of the Pacific, in the most isolated archipelago in the world. So, Polynesians brought red jungle fowl with them on their migration into the Pacific, including the terminal discovery of Kauai so this is going back about 600-700 years from now. And after this point, importantly, canoes stopped arriving and leaving in Hawaii. Then in more recent times, following Captain Cook's discovery of the islands, the domesticated strains of chickens that we use for food production and so forth were brought to these islands. So we actually, let me see if I have this. We know that these birds were here from fossilized cave bones. We actually didn't have any solid evidence to determine whether or not they had persisted into the present day. And then we do know that for some reason or other, Fish and Wildlife thought it was a good idea in the 1960s to reduce a whole bunch of red and gray jungle fowl on this island. And that's especially interesting because the story that I won't have time to tell you about from a recent study found that actually hybridization between these 2 lineages was integral to the development of our domesticated chicken breeds. So it's sort of interesting that there was a second opportunity for these 2 lineages to exchange genes on this island. But more importantly, the feral chickens literally cover this entire island. So when we have an evolution meeting on Kauai and we're able to see the beach walking between talks, we're also going to see chickens. They're everywhere. They will come into the airport and steal your sandwich before you get your luggage. And that's attributed to a lack of mongoose on Kauai, and also the liberation of cooped animals by hurricanes. So 2 massive storms hit Hawaii. This one, the biggest storm in recorded history for Hawaii, and literally decimated Kauai. So people were without food for weeks, and it took them many months to rebuild after that. And what the locals say is that during this time, enough chickens were left to fend for themselves that they wandered into the forest and created the feral population that we can see there today. Okay, so are these chickens undergoing reverse domestication? Is there a change in the selective environment that they're experiencing? Well, if you think about a chicken coop, what's happening here, this is a massive farm. Of course, this happens at a smaller scale also. Here, there's very limited male competition. So we select the roosters that get to interact with these females, limited female choice. They all eat the same thing, and they eat as much of it as they want. They get antibiotics, vaccines, protection from abiotic stressors, and predators. And in contrast, the birds on Kauai, I mean, you can just observe within a day, there's really intense male-male competition happening there. Females have access to multiple mates. They have to find their own food, and they're eating all kinds of things. There's no veterinary care involved. And then there's maternal care behaviors, an unpredictable and stressful environment, and high mortality rates. So we're able to scoop up roadkill in tens of individuals every day on this island, which is very small. So there seems to be a really different selection regime these two groups are experiencing. And so we wanted to study this population to see how this change in selection regime might be influencing the organisms that occupy Kauai today, and what role it might have played in this invasion. So first I'm going to show you Christmas bird count data from Audubon Society bird counts. So this is just a count of how many birds people observed on Christmas Day, going back to the years of these two storms, up into the present. We do see an exponential increase in the population size. So that's consistent with this idea that these hurricanes might have played some role in the fertilization of this population, or the establishment of this population. Now, of course, there are many other changes happening during this time. So there's habitat fragmentation, and more tourists are coming to the island and feeding them on the beaches and so forth. And so all those factors can potentially play a role. But we certainly weren't able to rule out this hurricane hypothesis. And also, importantly, so this population has been around long enough that there's some time for evolutionary change to occur. So when we looked at the genetic makeup of this population to figure out where it might have come from, okay, thank you. So what we see is contemporary samples from Kauai. Some of them cluster with mitochondrial, this is a mitochondrial phylogeny. Some of our sequences cluster with ancient samples from Kauai that predate European contact. These are from fossilized cave bones. And other samples cluster with this clade of chicken called clade E. And you have to oh, that's right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so clade E is basically the most cosmopolitan clade of chickens. So all of the European breeds that we use for food production, egg production, and so forth belong to this clade, and it's found worldwide. And it's never been found in the Pacific in the ancient samples. And so it seems to have been brought into the Pacific after European exploration. The phenotypes of these birds span a continuum from the RJF relative to domestic fancy breeds. So you can see, for example, this white feathering and this yellow pigmentation in the leg. These traits never occur in red jungle fowl, but they're very common in chicken breeds. And we find everything from birds that look more sort of jungle fowl-like to birds that look absolutely domesticated. We look at the phenotypes of these birds. You can see other traits that also show intermediacy. So I think hopefully you'll be able to hear. Do you know how I can use that? Just this right here. Everybody wake up? Okay, and this. Yep. Okay, I'm a little hoarse, so I can actually imitate these pretty well myself. pitched, and then these are higher pitched with a really truncated last syllable. And so the point I want to make with this slide is that on Kauai and around the world, when we record domestic chicken and red junglefowl, different elements of this call, we can find significant differences. And the birds on Kauai are intermediate. So these are all Kauai birds here. This is the third syllable duration, and they're intermediate between a chicken and a junglefowl. And same goes for the duration of the last syllable. And then here I've split these up into Kauai chicken and Kauai red junglefowl. So we're trying to get more sophisticated about this parsing right now. But what we did in this study, just as a crude analysis, is any bird that showed any sign of domesticated alleles, so yellow skin or white feathering or fancy comb traits and so on, we considered Kauai chicken. And any bird that we couldn't unambiguously diagnose as hybrid, we called Kauai red junglefowl. And so here it's kind of interesting that just in a really crude sense, the call phenotypes seem to correspond with the phenotypes of the birds using other traits. How much time? You said 12. I'm at 12? You're at 12. Okay, so I'm going to skip this slide. I'll just say where we're going next with this. We've identified 30 selected sweeps in the genomes of the Kauai birds. So we sequenced 23 birds' genomes. And the selected sweeps that we've detected include loci involved in spermatogenesis, sexual ornamentation, and behavior. So we're really excited about actually designing experimental tests to see what, at the organismal level, what these sweeps might be involved in. And then some of those sweep analyses recapitulate loci already identified as involved, essential to chicken domestication. Others are new, but are known to be involved in similar sets of traits, like the size of the comb. Lastly, I just want to say there are important conservation implications of this kind of work. So this isn't, I don't think, a super unique phenomenon where we have retrogression of genetic material from a domesticated species back into the wild, because the animals that we domesticate by and large are the ones that like to be near us, that are already commensal, and so that's going to create an opportunity for genes to flow back in the other direction. And here's an example. So we're creating these fancy cats now, the Bengal cat. It's actually, here we've got a monophyletic tree for cats, but actually if we include this guy, then we have to include some hybridization with the Asian leopard cat. And here in Kauai National Park, I'm showing you a female junglefowl and a male fighting rooster, and these two birds are living less than 10 miles away from each other, and there's a lot of potential for gene flow between them. And some people have written off the red junglefowl as contaminated throughout its entire range, and the unfortunate implication of that is if they're impure, if there's no pure red junglefowl left, maybe we shouldn't worry about them. But actually, these birds are living an incredibly wild lifestyle in primary tropical forests, and I think it's important to figure out not just if introgression has occurred, but how we might limit that and what's facilitating it. And as far as the broader implications go, well, chickens are important. There's 24 billion of them in the world right now. 1 trillion eggs produced annually, 86 million tons of meat. And they're important models for immunology development, and I want to say that I think they can also serve as useful evolutionary models, and that these feral populations are likely unparalleled reservoirs of genetic variation. So that's, yeah, there's my people I want to thank, and thanks for